Good morning, good evening from wherever you are in the world. We have two returning guests, Dhira Govinda Prabhu, who headed CPO from 98 through 2004 and is a leading authority on the topic, and Sanaka Rsi Prabhu, one of the activists who's been campaigning for many years for children protection and so on. Sanaka, maybe I'll ask you to do a little bit of a scene set in terms of what we're going to talk about today.
Thank you for having me, Damodara. Haribol, Dhira Govinda Prabhuji, and Haribol, everybody. I have quite a few topics in mind. Perhaps where we could start is over the last few years, I have followed different. I've taken interest in several high-profile child protection cases, and something that became very noticeable after the release of that video, the cost of silence, was that I saw an exceptional amount of pushback from disciples, supporters, and regardless of the severity of the abuse committed by the person, regardless of the evidence available, the response was very similar, which was like, we support child protection, we really like what you're doing, but why did you have to go after my favorite Swami? He's a nice guy. Can we not talk about somebody else? Can we just leave him alone? And this is something that, due to the fact that Lokanath Maharaj, in recent times, he's been in the news for child protection, to the fact that Lokanath Maharaj has an exceptionally large following. Probably I think Dhira Govinda Prabhu can correct me, but I think he has the largest following of anybody that has ever been scrutinized by the Child Protection Office. So the pushback this time is even greater. And then we have seen all manners of shastric justifications as to why it's okay, why he should be, an exception should be made for him, and for me, my personal perspective and realization is that you can't, if you're going to prioritize child protection, if you really want to protect children, you cannot have two-tier systems of justice. You can't have favoritism. Essentially, it has to be across the board. It has to be a standardized system of justice that is in place. The moment you make an exception for one, then you're setting a precedent where every other person who has friends, who has supporters, who has disciples, they will say, well, so-and-so Swami, an exception was made for so-and-so Swami. I demand that an exception is made also for my favorite Swami. And then everybody's going to go around saying that. And yeah, it's going to be quite a messy situation. I think I understand why a lot of people feel deeply upset, threatened, and even really, like, there's been a lot of really strong emotional reactions. There have been death threats. There have been curses. I understand people's reaction to this from the disciple's perspective. He might feel like his spiritual identity is being threatened, and there is like a reactive response. I'd like to perhaps, this is where we can start, but then I wanted to lead to like, how can the CPO work effectively in a situation that is so emotionally volatile, that is so charged, and so it's not just emotionally, there's so much political backroom activity going on. The GBCs are trying to figure out what is the best way. They've now come up with a panel, which I am quite dubious about its legitimacy. But anyway, we can talk about that later. I wanted to ask you, Dhira Govinda Prabhu, or Damodara, if you want to comment. How do you envision that would be the optimal way to deal with a situation like this that is so heavily charged? The stakes are so high for so many people, and for ISKCON itself, that like I don't think I've ever seen the stakes to be so high.
Please do tackle it, Dhira Govinda Prabhu. I might chip in if I have something to offer.
Well, how to deal with it on what level? On an individual level? I mean, not sure what to say. You know, the theme of awareness raising comes to me. Like you talked about effectiveness. So, well, from my point of view, so we established the ISKCON International Central Office Child Protection April 1998, and the office was quite effective, and then as months and years went on, quite effective in actually helping youth and families like that, and in restoring some trust and faith in devotees in basic Varnasrama protection for children, and in transforming the consciousness and culture of different devotee communities around the world. And then as months and years went on, more and more we encountered these sorts of situations that you nicely summarized, Sanaka. And yeah, this current one might certainly be the most extreme. And then my personal my personal sense is like, I guess my personal response as we got into 2001, 2002, you know, I was in my 5th year, 6th year, was, okay, the office is still effective, but the effectiveness became less and less because of needing to respond to the sort of politics you're describing. And then I personally chose at some point, after a little over 6 years serving as director of the office, that yeah, this isn't the best way for me personally to use my time to serve Prabhupada's movement.
Which is a real shame. It sounds like you were dealing with this phenomenon we talk about, flying monkeys, almost a weaponized group of devotees who are saying, we're going to run interference on this, and we're going to threat and challenge the legitimacy of everything. The worry, I suppose, is it becomes a war of attrition, where if the flying monkeys are aggressive enough, eventually they wear down others' resolve or whatever.
Yeah, that is definitely a major political strategy, that at some point Damodara, Saraswati, and Sanaka, they're going to get exhausted, and then then we win. Yeah, true.
It's one of these situations. I'm just coming back to your initial question, Sanaka. Clearly, this has been reviewed numerous times before, and I imagine if I was on the GBC or if I was Lokanath Maharaj, I'd be going, surely we're not going down this road again. How many times does this need to be adjudicated? My gut feel is the reason it keeps coming back up to be adjudicated is the community has no confidence in the decisions that were made, in the probity of those decisions. Some of that's compounded by the nature of the communication, a lot of it being suppressed or victim blaming and other things. Some of it's compounded by the apparent leniency of the sentences. But on the matter of probity, very much this idea that there was a conflict of interest, that the GBC should have recused themselves from looking into a matter with one of their colleagues, one of their peers. And they have various resolutions on what happens if a leader offends, and everything should be given to the International Child Protection Office, and yet that seems to be circumvented without any explanation. So my sense is this panel, which again has this feeling of being exjudiciary, will run into exactly the same problems if the community doesn't feel that they're going to trust in its conclusions. Then it's likely to resurface. So that's the kind of worry. It's beyond us. The GBC initially promised that they would give it to the CPO. They haven't explained why they've gone back on that decision. And they haven't explained why any decision that they arrive at should be trusted by the society generally. So that's a little bit of a worry there. Well, let me ask another question to Dhira Govinda Prabhu. We were talking about this just before. There are some objections coming from Maharaj's supporters and sympathizers that the very idea of CPO is a modern, newfangled idea, perhaps coming out of neoliberal thought, brought to you by the same people who brought you free sex and homosexuality and so on. And it's just based on mundane humanistic principles. Could you say a little bit about what is the guiding philosophy of something like child protection?
Yeah, well, it's Varnashram. So I'm fully in favor of Varnashram, and Varnashram. Then children are protected, as are elderly women and women and Brahmins and cows, and so it's Varnashram. And then, so if someone wants to look at my service, my attempted service during my years establishing and directing the Child Protection Office, and since then, and if someone wants to show how my service and the consciousness behind my service in the different CPO functions, including giving grants, investigations, adjudications, being a resource and guidance for anything around child protection and education. If someone wants to show how my service was influenced by any sort of deviant non-Vaishnav philosophies that Prabhupada would not approve of, then I'm open to hear open to hear how I've been influenced in a way that's not Prabhupada Parampara Siddhanta. I'm ready to hear like that. As far as in principle, the CPO is apasiddhanta. Well, in principle, that's ridiculous. I mean, maybe Dhira Govinda's approach to CPO was completely deviant, and fine, and let's hear it. But basically, it's called yukta vairagya, right? It's called that. So just like Varnashram and Vaishnavism, Guyam Akiti Prichati means there's revealing the heart and mind. And he's revealing the heart and mind, and there's communication. But nowhere in the Vedas does it say to use the United States Post Office. So Prabhupada was wrong to use the United States Post Office for communication. Nowhere in the Vedas or the Bhagavatam. What to speak of internet or email. So I said, well, yeah, that's called using Krishna's energy according to time and circumstance to serve the principle. So CPO, so a Varnashram function is to protect children. The CPO is an attempt to use some, let's call it modern structures to fulfill that Varnashram principle and goal. And if we, so in principle, it's yukta vairagya. It's completely shastric. If the application of it is imperfect or completely off base, okay, then I'm glad to hear how we can improve to make it, a lot more aligned with the eternal principle, like that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Can I say?
Yeah.
to me, what I find concerning about the stance of the devotees that are part of the ICC, Lokanath Swami supporters, is that they're not asking for a fair trial. They're asking for no trial. They're saying we have no faith, we have no confidence in the CPO. So they're not saying, okay, how do we have a fair trial so that we're satisfied that it's going to be fair and transparent. They're not asking for that. They're saying we don't want this investigated. Close this because it was mishandled 30 years ago. Therefore,
double jeopardy.
Look at it now. Yeah, double jeopardy. Double jeopardy is kind of ridiculous because the CPO never looked at it. The GBC has looked at it a couple of times and they kind of covered it up, but there was never a solid investigation of the case. And then, sorry, go ahead.
You spoke of philosophical misuse, and the one verse that we consistently hear is Apichetsudarachara, even the most abominable activity, unqualified, they will say. Therefore, there's nothing that's not covered by this. And sadareva samantavya, you must consider this person a sadhu if they've subsequently engaged in ananya bhakti. So from their perspective, with that kind of argument, they're saying any restriction would be a violation of Krishna's words. On the other hand, the argument is made, even if someone is restored to a sadhu status in Krishna's eyes, and possibly even the eyes of disciples and other well-wishers, a transgression against a child is not something that society can be seen to take lightly. It's not something we could possibly explain to our modern counterparts, people outside of the movement, what to speak of community members. I wonder if you have any thoughts, Dhira Govinda Prabhu, on how to reconcile Apichetsudarachara with what has actually transpired here.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll share. I think on a previous podcast almost 2 years ago, I shared something about.
You did.
And I maybe I won't share specifically about a particular case, in my opinion, how it should be applied, but in many cases, dozens related to the Child Protection Office, we regularly supported the panel, to kind of realize an effective encompassing balance of these principles, and both principles are valid. So it's so I think to get it resonant and right in an encompassing, satisfying way. Satisfying doesn't mean everyone's satisfied, but that we have a balanced interplay of principle. I think it requires some super soul realization, cooperation, that, and as I've shared, that that someone might be truly situated as a sadhu. Someone might be truly situated as a sadhu, and I mean that's for each of us to decide. Or he's just faking, whatever. Or no, he really is, and he's inspiring people. He's doing so much service for the Sankirtan. Someone might be truly situated as a sadhu. That doesn't necessarily mean that he shouldn't spend time in prison in order for the healing of the victims and the victims' parents, and for the message we send to society about what's okay and what's not okay. So whether someone's a sadhu or not, and that's for each of us to determine. I don't have much realization to recognize a sadhu personally, but anyhow, whether someone's a sadhu or not, and whether there should be some rectification plan, they are related discussions, but they're separate discussions. And so if someone is clearly a sadhu, then there should be no rectification plan. Not necessarily, because there's other factors. There's the integrity of Prabhupada's movement. There's the healing of those who were wounded, and there's the message we're sending to the devotee society, to the world at large. There's many considerations, and in so many cases, we considered the balance of these considerations.
Sanaka, you were going to say something?
Yeah. It's so difficult because there's so much manipulation intertwined with Shastra. It's so difficult to have the clarity and the a vision to separate them. Like, for example, there is this notion that forgiveness and forgiveness equates full reinstatement. So let's say that this perpetrator has apologized to his victim, and the victim is satisfied. And does that mean that this perpetrator should now be fully reinstated to the highest position in society? Is that advisable? Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? But oftentimes we see cases where there is a very I'm going to say energetic push to equate the two, which to me they're completely different things. If you look at the story of Jagai and Madai, after they were forgiven, I don't know if I read it in the Chaitanya Bhagavat or in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. One of them asks Nityananda Mahaprabhu. He says, I've offended so many people. We've offended so many Vaishnavas. We don't even know who they are. How do we possibly make amends? How do we overcome that? And then Nityananda says, you go and clean the ghat, and that's your service for the rest of your life. So it was like a very humble. It wasn't like. I think it's not necessarily, but I think it is an important element. There has to be genuine humility and genuine remorse, and the apology needs to be genuine.
Yeah, and what I guess something I'm hearing you in what you're saying, Sanaka, is that okay? So that if the perpetrator, well, of course, it needs to be genuine and not just, well, I'll write the apology letter and say I'm sorry, so then I can have my position. Then that's right. So that's very obnoxious, actually. But so, like, if the perpetrator is sincere and that's manifested by sincere rectification, then probably the perpetrator isn't going to be wanting, like, to be in a position or something like that. Probably. Yeah.
It's also worth observing, I mean, many people have said this, if there was a child, a breach of child protection, let's say at a school, and it was a janitor involved, that janitor would be written off for the rest of his life at working in such a position. So even more so then, if the fact that someone was a priest, a sannyasi, a holy person, staying in someone's home, and if that was the basis of which the trust was extended and that trust was therefore abused, it seems, very unusual for someone to argue that we should put that person in the same position of trust again. Surely that position would therefore be forfeit. And that, as you mentioned, Dhira Govinda, that's no contradiction with, he may have redeemed himself in the eyes of Krishna. He may have redeemed himself as a sadhu.
Yeah.
But this is the social opportunity, social position, social consequence that needs to be considered. Sanaka, you had a series of questions, didn't you?
Okay, some devotees have put forth the idea that there's no need for CPO. That if we simply, if the ISKCON society simply follows the Varnashram principles and they separate the men and women, male and female, then that will automatically magically solve child protection and the child abuse problem in ISKCON, which I don't even, anyway, what's your thoughts, Dhira Govinda and Damodara?
I think I addressed this a few minutes ago. Essentially, so like I in a sense, I agree. I agree with that assertion. I'm in agreement with it. At the same time, the way the assertion is presented, it sounds somewhat superfluous. It sounds somewhat superfluous. Like the idea, like I'm in agreement that okay, we just apply Varnashram and not that I understand so much about what Varnashram is in 5,000 years ago. I don't have much understanding, but in principle, we know Varnashram protects children, so we apply it now. We don't need something called a Child Protection Office. I'm in agreement with that philosophically, but then it's not an easy thing. I don't even think it's a desirable thing to try to take Varnashram, as we understand it from 5,000 years ago, and just transplant it into 21st century Florida, or even West Bengal, or Europe, or Australia. Not that not just it's not easy. I don't even think it's desirable. So I think it's a matter of understanding the essential principles. Understanding the essential principles behind Varnashram, not just superficially saying, just use Varnashram. And then if we understand the essential principles and how to apply them in regards to time and circumstance, some of that application might take the form of something called the Child Protection Office. And yeah, as we discussed earlier, sure, let's make sure that anything done in the name of Child Protection Office is rigorously founded on Prabhupada's Siddhanta and not some speculative New Age thing. I agree with all that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a prevention and a cure kind of phenomenon here. If we could organize society in such a way that there was never these tragedies, that would of course be preferable to having to have a mechanism for investigating them and ensuring that perpetrators are caught and those various regulations made. The fact is we still have those kind of breaches. And what are we going to say? That they should not be investigated because in an ideal world they would have never happened? So yes, it does seem idealistic and impractical. And I think to Dhira Govinda Prabhu's point, superfluous. It doesn't seem like it's a valid way of thinking.
But also the notion that somehow, if you separate men and women, children are protected is there's Brian Marvin. He just commented what I was going to say. He said separating men and women doesn't protect children in any way. That's ludicrous. If you look at most of the child abuse that's taken place in ISKCON was male on male. So the notion that separating them somehow solves the problem, that's madness.
Yes, it seems like it's a strategy to simply deflect and say we are questioning the legitimacy of any CPO investigation, and we'll use any old desperate argument.
Dhira Govinda Prabhu, when the Lokanath Swami case first came up, did the GBC give you a reason why it wasn't the CPO wasn't allowed to investigate it?
Yeah, the reason was that they already took care of it. They investigated, and they handled it already. They handled it already. All right, so you got me going on it. So I'll say a little bit more. And I know in recent weeks, even days, I've written a bit about this. So the idea is they've already handled it. And then as I've expressed or written in many instances, so I would say because people were coming to me, devotees, members of Prabhupada's movement, coming to me and go, what about the Lokanath Swami case? They were coming to me right there in the initial days, weeks of the CPO, April, May 1998. So, and we were like every day, Egypt Prabhu and we were like opening new cases every day. We were getting just flooded with reports from all around the world. Devotees were very excited, like, wow, there's an office that's like set up to handle things. So we certainly heard about the Lokanath Swami case, and that was, quite pretty high profile. So members of the organization and the movement were coming, what about the Lokanath Swami case? So I said, oh, on that one, the GBC has they've told me they've already handled it, and they've already written a report on it. Oh, okay. Where's the report? Where's the official decision? So I said, so I would write to the GBC. Yeah, people are asking, where's the report? People are asking, how come someone who was accused of sexually inappropriate behavior towards an 11-year-old girl is the ISKCON social development minister? Good question. So anyhow, so for not months, not even a year, so for years and years, I got the runaround. I was just saying, I was never, I'll say it, I might be praised or criticized, I don't know. I never advocated the CPO should deal with this case. I just said to the GBC, okay, you don't want CPO to deal with it, you've already dealt with it. Okay, you've already written, so give me the report. And they wouldn't send me the report. And oh, this one has it. Oh, that committee over there. No, this went on for years. Okay, so that's what now. Then something I wrote on, I think on Beta Inquirer a day or a few ago. So, and I think this is important for listeners to understand, just because you say, okay, so that's the reason they gave. The GBC already handled it. Now here's an important point. Before the CPO opened in April of 1998, the GBC had already dealt with dozens of cases of child abuse connected with the ISKCON organization. Of those dozens and dozens of cases that the GBC already dealt with, how many of those cases did the GBC say, don't touch this CPO? The answer is 1. Lokanath Swami case. As an example, there were dozens of cases that happened in ISKCON Mayapur, late 70s through 1991. And those cases were investigated, adjudicated according to the system. There was a team of 4. Adikarta, Toshan Krishna, Dai Ram, and Bhaktarupa Prabhus. They did an investigation. They had little to no resources. And I read their report soon after I assumed my responsibilities with the Child Protection Office. And they did an excellent job. I'm still very impressed. And it was dozens of cases. And they gave clear recommendations for restrictions and rectification and healing. It was really nicely done. And from my point of view, it was done at a much, much higher level than what the GBC did with the Lokanath Swami case. But anyhow, the GBC, they wanted the CPO to deal again with those dozens of cases in Mayapur. So I'm just saying there's an inconsistency here, and because as you started off, Sanaka, none of those dozens of perpetrators or alleged perpetrators in Mayapur, if we count the total number of their disciples, it comes to 0. This is an important point.
I remember, you wrote an article many years ago called "Favoritism and the Appeal Process," where you described the challenges that you had dealing with high-profile cases.
Yeah.
Now, recently, the Lokanath Swami case has been quite, the last 4 months, I don't know how long it's been, have been quite a roller coaster, because it almost immediately, almost at the beginning, the GBC said, yeah, this needs to go to the CPO. Then they did a U-turn, which I was very surprised that the GBC made that public statement, because I was in disbelief, if I have to be honest, knowing what I know, seeing what I've seen. And then very shortly after that, they made a U-turn and said, actually, we're going to create a panel that's going to decide what's going to happen, whether the CPO needs to look at this. And on the panel, they put, there is nobody representing the victim. There is the society, Lokanath Swami's supporters have 2 representatives. ISKCON is very well represented, but there's nobody advocating for, not one person on there advocating for the victim. There's recently been talk of maybe allowing Saraswati to go on there, but as far as I know, it's not confirmed. But the notion that somehow such a panel would inspire confidence and trust in a very murky case, it's astonishing to me. The GBC would think that somehow that would be valuable and in restoring confidence in a case that needs so much of it.
Are there any particular red flags, Dhira Govinda, when you even look at what eventually has, come to the surface around the investigation in 1993, the documentation around that, even some of the leaked emails around that? What are the red flags that you see that suggest, something is remiss?
Okay. Well, red flag. I'm more inclined to talk about like principles as they relate to particular cases. So, okay, red flag could be seen as a negative term, but I'm with you on using that term. Like, okay, so there's a whole festival of red flags from the very beginning, clearly indicating that ISKCON leadership is not honoring in any appreciable way the principle of justice is blind. So, I wouldn't like we could just taste this case anywhere. We could pick it up anywhere, and it's like there's a whole bunch of red flags. Okay, I've already described a few. Like, okay, CPO shouldn't touch it, and that was okay with me in 1998. But then let's be consistent. GBC dealt with other cases better than they dealt with Lokanath. Why does the CBO touch that one? Okay, so there's an inconsistency. Justice is not blind. Now, someone can say, well, that's a good thing. That's because so many people are inspired by Lokanath Swami, and we don't want to disrupt their faith, so this is protected. People can have arguments. But in terms of the justice is blind principle, practically from beginning to end, consistently, it just there's no honoring of that principle. Clearly, let's not pretend there is from ISKCON leadership on this case. And some could say that's a good thing because there should be special treatment here. Everyone can have their opinion.
What other questions do you have, Sanaka?
I wanted to go touch back on the point that Damodara raised earlier about Apichetsudarachara. Recently, devotees have brought up some quotes from the Madhurya Kadambini, which I'd never seen before, but which say that essentially they say the holy name can destroy even Vaishnava Parad, can eradicate Vaishnava Parad. One simply needs to chant and everything is fine. You don't need to apologize. You don't need to do anything. It's all just chant and be happy and everything is fine. I just wondered, I got my phone here. I can't bring up the exact quote. I don't have the exact quote, but that was the essence of the quote. I'd be interested to hear what you, Dhira Govinda and Damodara, think, your thoughts on that.
Damodar, would you like to express?
Yes, it may be so. Obviously we hear conflicting things, like every day there's a particular verse we sing at the beginning of Japa saying if you're infested with the 10 offenses, you can you could chant for many births and you'd still never get the fruits of love of Godhead. Krishna has his own sweet will, and I guess if one has a sincere repentance, even let's say the victim never finds it in their heart to actually forgive, Krishna may change his attitude, and may soften and see that person's repentance is sincere. I think one of the challenges in this case is it does appear that repentance is actually missing. Not only was there no penned letter of acknowledgement by Maharaj, it had to be penned by others, but was still signed by Maharaj. But even now, there's denial. In fact, there's even denial about the authenticity of the ghost-written letter, as if Maharaj was somehow unaware of its contents, even though it was signed by him. So it would appear that if one fails to even to come to terms with the damage you've caused and the trauma you've caused in another person's life, the appeal to directly take shelter of Krishna and bypass any attempts to resolve with the victim and potentially to re-traumatize the victim by appearing in the holy seat and being honored in the assembly. These things seem, just wholly inappropriate. Those are my initial thoughts on this, but I'd welcome to dear Govinda Prabhu's points.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. I think it's in the category of the Apichetsudarachara and like that. And so as you said, that the holy person chants Hare Krishna in ecstasy and doesn't need to do any And I would think, not that I have realization, but I would think that the truly holy person, like Jagai and Madai in their transformation, would be like in this heartfelt wanting to rectify and really like deeply feeling the pain of the victim and her family, and I would think that and okay, so Madhurya Kandambini or whatever, okay, these let's say they are philosophically true quotes, and the way to apply them is to cram them down the throat of the girl who was transgressed, or right. So with those who are transgressed against, I mean, that's the time for understanding and hearing their pain and woundedness, and so like how to apply, how and when to kind of like, look, a holy man, he just chants Hare Krishna, he's completely Apichetsudarachara, so just shut up. Just
we're
shut
seeing
up.
a lot of that.
Do you see how much service he's doing, and how much service have you done for Prabhupada's movement compared to him? So just shut up. Be a Vaishnav like me, and develop. See, it's like how are the quotes used? And I'm being deliberately a little dramatic to get across the energy of how quotes are misused.
But also the quote was used as a, how do you say, almost as a way to avoid apologizing. It's like, oh, here it says that you don't need to apologize, and if the person doesn't, that's okay. You can just chant and it'll be fine. But that's, I mean, I think that I can envision a scenario where a person offers the most, because apologizing is one of the hardest things ever. An honest apology needs to be self-incriminating. And I've seen very, very few good apologies in my life. I've read a lot of apologies related to CPO case files, and some of them were shocking. Like one of the apologies I read was something along the lines of, "I'm sorry if you were displeased while I was trying to carry out my service by," so something along those lines. But I think I can envision a scenario where somebody offers a genuine apology. Somebody really does the best that, if I've offended someone, I offer the best apology that I'm capable of right now. And somehow the offended party is not satisfied. And then I'm desperate because I understand that my spiritual life cannot progress until I have resolved this. And in that mood, if I chant in that mood of desperation where I call out to Krishna, then yes, that in that consciousness, I think it may be possible to overcome Vaishnava Parad without the blessings of the person that has been offended. But if it's used as they say, well, you don't really need to appease the offender, then I don't think it's going to work. In fact, Prabhupada in the Bhagavatam, and I'll put the exact quote in the comments. Srila Prabhupada in the Bhagavatam explains that you have to appease when you've committed Vaishnava Parad. You have to appease the Vaishnava that you have offended, and that it's not just write an apology and you're done. The Vaishnava you offended needs to be appeased, and that's an important component.
Dhira Govinda Prabhu, you will have seen offenders over the years being confronted with what it is that they've done and the damage that that's caused to other people. In your experience, how often would you see a true recognition, and how often would you witness someone who, by dint of that recognition, potentially did really redeem their character to a large extent? Is it rare? Is it commonplace?
My experience is it's rare, but not never. I have been inspired by some of those who have transgressed child maltreatment, sexual abuse, like that, and I've been personally moved by a few of them. So pretty rare, but they do exist in my experience, and it's pretty rare.
Does it make a difference to the victim's healing if they see genuine remorse and recognition? Or is that incidental? That's just an independent process that the victim and survivor will go on?
I found it often makes a substantial difference in the depth and acceleration of healing. Often, not always.
Thank you. What else you got, Sanaka?
Before we go on to the next question, I wanted to ask you, Govinda Prabhu, what do you think? Could you describe your idea of a good apology?
Well, I think you described it well. I liked how you started. Oh, first of all, I really like your description of the essence. I'm not familiar with the Madhura Kadambini verse, but I think I get the idea. And I like how you described the essence, like how it can be misused. And the actual essence is that someone's really giving their 100% sincere. Okay, the one who was transgressed, maybe understandably, is just not accepting. All right, so then that's where it applies, not as like a legal loophole to avoid giving my earnest, vulnerable, raw expression of remorse. To avoid that, I have this verse, so I'll just I'll chant extra rounds today. All is good. It's not meant as a loophole. Yeah.
There was a conundrum that someone raised. Apparently in Krishna Bhajanamrita, Srila Narahari Sakar mentions that if a guru takes up some kind of demoniac activities and then doesn't rectify, they're fit to be given up. But this idea is that if they have rectified, then it may be inappropriate to just give them up as a guru. So some are sort of saying, even if they understand in principle that stepping down might be appropriate for a crime like this, what do you tell all those disciples? You just have to reject. And of course, this is compounded by the fact that there's probably been 5,000 extra disciples added since 1993, many of whom were not told, despite there being a regulation that they should be told, and therefore the shock horror. How do we resolve that conundrum? Is the GBC, going to turn around and say, that's it, disqualified, all of you take reinitiation and repose your faith somewhere else? Or do they just say, no more initiations from you, but I guess the strictures on the existing disciples serving you as Shakshad Hari, well, I guess all that has to continue, because it appears that we can't prohibit that. So again, maybe it's a difficult thing to get you to solve. It may be like the Ashvatthama, how to kill a person without killing them. But do you have a view as to how to reconcile these kind of things?
Yeah, I don't really see it as difficult.
Okay. Do you have a view as to how it might be done?
Yeah. Like, okay, so if someone would have used the term, a few things. Like, if someone is just like naturally, sincerely inspired by, we're talking by Lokanath Maharaj, then I wouldn't want to interfere with that. I wouldn't want to interfere with that. Like, if they're sincerely inspired. Like, okay, I guess I'm seeing at least three components, but so it's a little complex, but I feel pretty clear based on what I understand from Prabhupada. So, like, okay, that someone did something that revealed some anartas, whether last year, 30 years ago, and someone else is inspired to chant Hare Krishna and read Prabhupada's books. So that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I don't think, I wouldn't want to try to legislate against that. I'd feel terrible to try to legislate against that. If someone's genuinely inspired, not in a fanatical way that Sanaka described at the beginning, right? Like, yeah, it's a pretty common scenario. Like, yeah, we know GBC is corrupt and hypocritical, but my mentor is the one who stands courageously for the child protection, and like everyone's thinking like that, and so then you can't really apply principles of fairness, compassion, or justice anywhere, because then you've got the blind spots, of the followers of the mentor. But if whatever someone did, but if someone's truly inspired in their Krishna consciousness, I don't want to get in the way of that. Now, from the point of view of someone who transgressed, okay, then I would think that, a few minutes ago, I talked about, I talked about that, following up on what Sanaka shared, that the transgressor wouldn't want a position. And that transgressor who's, sincere in their transformation and in their apology, and not just apology in a superficial sense, the Jagai Madai sincere, yeah, they wouldn't want the position. They would want, they would be eager to serve Prabhupada's movement, and I would think that then that spirit soul is going to be so inspiring. I'd be inspired. That spirit soul is going to be naturally inspiring, not based on position, not based on legislation. So if someone's naturally inspired, let them be inspired. And I would think that the transgressor would naturally, I would think, what do I know? But I would think the transgressor would give up position, honor, things like that. And then he or she would be an even more inspiring devotee. And if people are genuinely inspired, let 5 million people be inspired, but genuinely inspired, not like in a superficial, but genuinely inspired to read Bhagavatam, chant Hare Krishna, share Prabhupada's teachings, distribute prasad. This devotee is inspiring me. As far as if we study what Srila Prabhupada said and wrote about reinitiation, we'll find that Prabhupada said nothing. So that's an important point. Nothing about reinitiation, meaning that clearly Prabhupada, and so it's interesting that in the institution there have been thousands and thousands of this thing called reinitiation. the fact that not just, he said that he just never mentioned it, never, which seems to indicate that he established a system that no one would ever even think about it. So yeah, let souls be inspired by Lokanath Maharaj or whoever. I wouldn't want to try to get in the way of that. If any institution or individual does, I think that's mistaken. And I would think that the one who did the transgression would be enthusiastic to continue to humbly serve without the trappings of any position or pranam mantras or pictures on the altar when offering boga or things like that.
Just a couple of comments here I might read while Sanaka loads the next question. Personally, I believe the holy name can liberate people from all kinds of sin, etc. Otherwise, what are we doing, right? But I still think that people have to be accountable, and even if repentance is there, consequences should still follow. Otherwise, we make way for more of the same, just allowing by way of Shastra more abuse. And another comment similar to the theme. Except for Vaishnava Aparad, that has to be resolved by the forgiveness of the offended Vaishnava. In the case of the child abuse, especially decades later, how does one resolve the cumulative trauma that hurt the person's growth in Krishna consciousness? It's a great point, isn't it? That we might focus so much on the needs and interests of the disciples, the needs and interests of the accused, but if we're actually trying to understand what facilitates the healing of victims and survivors, they often seem to get overlooked in our process. And I suspect many people are just still unaware. It's not just by going, oh, that was just a karmic thing that happened to me. Now that you've told me that, I'm instantly free from all the trauma. It can follow a person throughout their life and play havoc in life outcomes, health, career, addictions, all kinds of things.
Yeah, I'm glad we're going there, because as the years of the Child Protection Office went on, my service was more and more, less and less around investigations and adjudications. And actually, I'm not all that interested in that, just my psychophysical nature, and more around healing, transformation. And as I mentioned, like we actually developed the advanced seminar of the Safatov Institute. It was originally for the healing and auspicious transformation of Vaishnav youth who were maltreated when they were children. Both of you are familiar with that. We've talked about that, and so that's actually that whole aspect of it is a lot more enthusing for me than the other aspect. I'm not saying the adjudications, investigations are less important. Just as far as my psychophysical nature. The whole healing process and self-discovery and like that. And I appreciate that this is coming up, because in terms, not only division get overlooked, but also that's a great point, because someone mentioned karma, because just like, right. So yeah. So why don't you just accept your karma? Or, I mean, there's a lot of things like that. Don't you know the statement of the Lion Guru? The world stands in no need of any reformer. Why are you doing this advocacy? It's your karma. So, and a point I'll make that this Apichetsudarachara or Trinadapi Sunechina, be humbler, all these verses. So we can think about, how adults or people in leadership positions or the teachers, the whatever, how they are misusing Shastra. But also that as or more important is, in my experience, the youth who were maltreated as children, they misuse Shastra to stifle themselves and to impede their own healing and to impede their own empowerment, because they've owned the misuse of the principle of karma. And so that's important. I've encountered that a lot, that the youth or some middle-aged adult who was sexually abused, physically abused, neglected within the organization, that they've adopted these twisted understandings of Apichetsudarachara and humility and the world stands in no need of any reformer. And so I found it's often vital to support them to look at that, to look at that and to disentangle their misconceptions. Like, sure, karma, and first of all, it's not for me to say to someone, oh, what happened when you were 6 years old? It's your karma. That's not my role. Maybe at some point it's their role to come to whatever realization they come to. And an important point about karma is well, okay, there's the principle of karma, then there's the principle of what's my dharma. So, okay, maybe that was my karma, and again, that's not for Dhira Govinda to tell someone, but maybe that was my karma, and my dharma is to put you in prison. No contradiction there. And I'll say, I mean, just to get a little more nuanced here, it's true. If someone experienced some karma from something previous life or whatever, and then if there is a mentality from rajas or tamas, if there is a mentality of I'm going to hurt you back, which is different than like Arjuna realized it's his dharma to fight this battle from a sattvic place, a shuddha sattvic place. That like so if someone is like I'm going to destroy the instrument of my karma, then if there is rajas or tamas involved, then it's true. Then we are perpetuating the cycle of karma. And if someone sees, okay, whatever, this is my karma, I've processed, I've come to some realization philosophically, emotionally, whatever, and it's my dharma, either sattvic or truly transcendental. I say truly as opposed to spiritual bypass, artificial transcendence. But like, okay, but I'm going to do my dharma, fight my battle. Then I'm not further entangling myself or others in karma. So I just want to address the karma issue because that's been misused a lot.
Just following on from the vilification point that was brought up, it seems to be going beyond that at the moment, where victims are actually being threatened, relatives are being threatened, relatives of some of the people who even just speak on the Vedic Inquirer have been threatened. Is there anything that, in your view, CPO can do in these instances to keep victims and whistleblowers safe, or their relatives? Is this now, given that the GBC have decided to take it off the CPO, is this actually a liability now on the part of those leaders? I mean, apparently the 60-day process that was supposed to be kicked off, we were notified about on the 21st of July. So exactly 1 month ago, hasn't even begun. The clock hasn't even begun ticking yet. So it feels like this is being dragged out and dragged out. In the meantime, the tensions are building between Maharaja's supporters and those who have a view that some kind of justice still needs to be done. Do you have a view on how do people keep themselves safe? Should people just follow discretion is the better part of valor and just stay out of the limelight and at the risk of being bulldozed, or publish and be damned? What's your view?
Okay. Well, you and I had a few moments of talk before we officially went online here, right? And so,
yep.
I've been, I endeavor that when I communicate that I'm civil and respectful and in a Vaishnav way, and I'm sure maybe sometimes I succeed and sometimes not. But yeah, I've had my life threatened. Just scenarios you've described where a particular official ISKCON guru was being under investigation, and his some of his sincere followers, made some threats, and But yeah, I saw it as an occupational hazard. So but that's just like my response is to express myself in a way that's truly, sincerely endeavoring to be sattvic expression means express the truth, if not fearlessly, at least courageously. Means I'm not, but so express the truth and express it in a way where I can say to myself, to Prabhupada, I'm truly expressing this in a way that's meant to be beneficial. I'm not intending to harm or hurt or belittle or slander. I'm not taking out my unhealed wounds on someone else, on some unresolved anger issues. That I'm expressing my truth without compromise, and in a way that's truly intended to be beneficial for everyone involved. It might not be pleasant, but it's true and it's beneficial, and it's so that's my endeavor, and with various levels of success. And that's my endeavor, and I understand that it's an occupational hazard. That if that's the stand I take in life, whether it's child protection related to this kind of organization or so many other topics, then some people will admire. Some people will admire what I express and how I express it. Some might be inspired. Some might appreciate and increase their respect for me. Others, if I take a stand, here's the facts. Here's my perspective. Some people might throw rocks or shoot bullets because they want me to sit down and be quiet. I just kind of see it as an occupational. Like I'm not trying. I don't want to be reckless. I'm not trying to provoke for the sake of provoking. At the same time, neither. I know that I'm not fulfilling my highest destiny, purpose, and mission if I'm going to withhold out of fear. So that's the way I endeavor to go about things. And I'm not expecting any institution or committee or Facebook group to provide any protection for me. There's occupational hazard.
Here's a related question from Saraswati. What can we as a society do when there is a lack of strong Kshatriya leaders protecting the children? Might be a rhetorical question.
Mm-hmm.
Sanak, what else have you got?
Something, a few things, but something that's somewhat related to Saraswati's question, which is the point of etiquette, which has been brought up a lot. Lokanath Swami is a senior Prabhupada disciple. He's a sannyasi. He's a guru. He's senior to most people who are trying to campaign to both an age and spiritual standing. So what? How? So then they say, it's not according to Vaishnava etiquette. You don't correct your superiors. Now we have a problem, as Saraswati mentioned, that the superiors, his people who are his equal, are not doing anything about it. In fact, they have done a lot to cover up the problem. So in a situation like this, what is the respectful way to address a situation like this? Because for me, remaining silent is a bad option. Saying it's not my service, which is kind of what's implied as though it's against Vaishnava etiquette to correct your superiors. It's like, it's not my. I'm just going to look the other way while we sail off the cliff. So what would be the respectful way to address somebody who has socially a superior standing, but has done something which is severe and serious? Somebody commented saying child abuser is not a superior.
Okay, well, I appreciate the comments, including Saraswati's comment question, what you just expressed, Sanaka. Well, so one thing comes in terms of Kshatriyas, is like, Okay, well, the world is obviously a dangerous place and getting more dangerous. And so, the one word that comes to mind is parents. Like parents, whatever Varna you consider yourself, whatever Varna you consider yourself, Kshatriya, Brahmin, Sudra, Mlecha, Chandala, parents, be responsible. Be responsible for your children's protection, physical, emotional, spiritual, like that. And we discussed this last time in the 2019 interview with Damodara and Sanaka. So if parents, if you're going to entrust your child or children to an institution or a teacher, be conscious, be responsible for the rewards and potential consequences. So on a societal level, I think Saraswati's question exposes a shortcoming, a gap. So parents, be responsible to fill that gap. And even some parents might give their best effort and children will still get mistreated. So, and then as far as etiquette,
sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying, my understanding, this Vaishnava etiquette, this is another thing that's a philosophical, a true philosophical principle that's often misused. Without getting into details, the essence of the purpose of Vaishnava etiquette, my understanding, is to enhance the exchange of truth, to enhance the quality of relations between spirit souls who are sincere about self-discovery and Krishna consciousness and divine consciousness. Vaishnava etiquette is not supposed to be, it's not supposed to be a wall or a barrier to avoid honest communication. It's supposed to create a container and a structure to enhance honest communication. And so I'll just give that principle, and to think that because we have this Vaishnava etiquette rule here, so then there's a wall, there's a barrier. Like I think that's not just missing the point. It's 180 degrees wrong.
I wanted to just put forth the devil's advocate observation, which is that many ISKCON parents have proved beyond reasonable doubt that they weren't capable of protecting their children, that they made very poor choices in this regard. So that's why there is also a need for a society. To me, responsibility is, how do you say, it's not shared. So responsibility is, so the parent is 100% responsible for the protection of their children. Society is also 100% responsible, and the teachers are also 100% responsible. It's not it's not 30-30-30 where the teacher says, well, I did my part, but the parents didn't do theirs, so the child drowned. So to me, that's an important anyway, just thought I'd throw it.
So if the parents are lacking in a sense of responsibility, and the teachers are lacking, and kshatriya and true kshatriyas are missing, then there's a problem. Then children are susceptible to be harmed.
I've got another question here, but I'm mindful that you may have other things on your list, Sanaka.
No, go ahead.
So it might be a little disjointed in terms of where it fits, but we've been talking about rectification. And of course, maybe none of us want to be in a position of saying, I can tell whether someone has rectified or whatever. But let's say if someone is looking at it from the perspective of looking into their own hearts and saying, have I paid my dues? Have I cleansed myself or whatever? How would we recognize that rectification is happening?
Okay. Well, I appreciated what Sanaka shared earlier about what a true true apology looks like, and it includes a genuine acknowledgement of what I did. It includes, at least externally, again, like your statement, Damodara, like internally, who am I to say, maybe someone's just putting on a good show and I'm convinced because I'm naive, internally, that's, we can all determine first for ourselves and for others. But okay, so that we're seeing there's acknowledgement and there's 100% responsibility. It's there's no slipping and sliding. Like I stand 100% responsible for me well, I was really stressed out, and really she sort of had this seductive look, like I stand 100% responsible for the transgression that I committed, and then there's an honest, truthful account, sincere apology, and sincere not just offer, sincere commitment to make amends and rectify. It can look in so many ways. It can look monetary. It can look doing menial service for the family. I mean, it can look so many ways. Whatever it looks like externally, again, internally, who's to say?
I wanted to add something, and I want to. Anyway, I'm just going to come out with it. I don't want to pick on Lokanath Swami, but his case is in the headlines right now, and I think there is things he could do to. There's a lot he could do to show his, like, for Lokanath Swami is the one person who could stop the attacks that his followers and supporters and disciples are carrying out on his victim. To me, that would suggest rectification, remorse, a genuine concern. The fact that he's silent and he's hiding behind these devotees who are behaving like thugs. The behavior, they're behaving like bullies. That's what they're doing. The fact that Lokanath Maharaj is hiding behind these devotees in silence, instead of, in my limited understanding and perspective, a Vaishnava would come out and say, this is completely unacceptable. This is not Vaishnava. I have caused this. I'm the cause of this. I don't care what I lose. I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure that the person that I traumatized with my bad judgment calls, bad decisions, and my actions is not going to be further abused because of my silence, or for what, certainly to me, he is complicit in the perpetuation of in the circle of abuse. It's like a downward spiral that expands the abuse, and he is complicit with his silence. He is the one person who could put an end to this with just very simply and very quickly. Yes, the price would be high, but I think the price that he's paying, and we will be paying with continued silence, is even greater.
I like what you just expressed, Sanaka. Thank you.
Any other questions on your list, Sanaka?
I just wanted to a couple of things. When Dhira Govinda was talking about karma, and you don't tell somebody who's been abused that it's their karma, it reminded me that of my days when I was in Gurukul. One of my teachers, when he was beating us, he would tell us your karma. That was his that was his transmission of Krishna conscious philosophy. And now looking at it in hindsight, yes, it was my karma. Because if I had that kind of teacher, that I don't know what I did. In my past lives, I must have caused a lot of distress and offenses to others, certainly. But to tell somebody who is suffering that this is your karma, unless you're coming from a place of love, trust, concern, where that the person is going to benefit from that remark, that is what you're doing is diabolical. It's like you're adding insult to injury. There's nothing that's not even though you're speaking the philosophy, you're not expressing the vibration of Krishna consciousness. Is not being transmitted. There is nothing Krishna conscious about. You're using the scriptures to abuse people, and that's there's nothing spiritual about that.
Very, very,
Comment.
very, very important points. Thanks for sharing that, Sanaka. And they're philosophical, emotional, and very personal points. Thanks for expressing.
I also wanted to just touch on something that I mentioned in something that I wrote recently, that the Krishna. Sorry, escaped me. Damodara, take. It'll come back to me in a second.
Yeah, well, I was thinking that we're at about 80 minutes in, so it might be a chance to do some sort of summary comments. Hopefully, that still gives you a chance to think about
I got it. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, good stuff.
I was going to say that the optimist in me, I believe that what is happening now with Lokanath Swami's case is it's like it's certainly Krishna's doing, not just because everything is under his control, but I think he has taken a specific interest in this. I see that somehow this Lokanath Swami's case has opened a huge window, is shining a huge light on a very complex and problematic stumbling block for the Hare Krishna society. The follow up on what I said earlier at the beginning of the show, this podcast today, where the disciples say, "Oh yes, I'm for child protection, but except for my guru." The follow up on that is that the perpetrators are the symptom of the problem. The problem is a collective consciousness that supports, enables, protects, and defends the abuse and these abusers. So what is happening, what I see happening with Lokanath Swami's case, is Krishna is shining a huge light on this problem and saying, we cannot, this needs to be addressed. We cannot go forward as a society, both individually and collectively, unless and until this is addressed. And the light is getting bigger and bigger. The momentum is getting. A friend of mine was saying, this is turning into a movement. It started off as a campaign. It's turned into a movement. So for me, this is. I feel, I don't know how to express it without sounding hippie, but I feel like there's some huge grace that is taking place right now, some incredible mercy of Krishna that we're living through. I feel like we're on the cusp of significant change for the society, a collective raising of consciousness and awareness. And let's see let's see what the next chapter brings, but I'm very hopeful.
Thanks, Sanaka. Any concluding words from you, dear Govinda ji?
I'm inspired by Sanaka's concluding words very much. There's someone wrote, yeah, right, that this is a symptom. I'm moved by the applied, nuanced philosophical discussion we went to today. You know, as it manifests in this particular case, and and so I'm moved to more and more fully and subtly understand the essence of Prabhupada's Siddhanta and teachings in relation to societal protection, especially of vulnerable members like children, and the, I'm using this word superfluous, but the superfluous, or the application of, a shloka here and there, it can not just be like misapplied. That becomes like really, really dangerous. Like, I was very moved, Sanaka, when you shared a few minutes ago when you were personally being beaten by the adult and using karma. Like, this is just, you use the word diabolical, and so I'm moved to fuller devotion to these sublime, profound teachings, and that my life will be a legacy of these teachings. And I'm like more and more conscious, more and more on guard to not misapply them, because that creates catastrophe individually, organizationally, and to and to be an instrument for the actual essence and import, which is filled with inspired intelligence and caring heart.
I might just share a couple of closing words from my side. I am mixed about where we're at the moment. I was super encouraged back in May when I heard that the case was going to CPO. I thought, wow, finally we're starting to see what needs to be done. I was shocked that there was a reversal of that. Because I couldn't imagine how you could possibly justify a reversal of that. And yet here we are. Now I'm simply intrigued. I wonder where the GBC will land. I would have preferred it go to CPO. I hope it still goes to CPO. But I'm truly intrigued to see where they land. I think I am troubled by some of the reaction from Maharaj's supporters. Because it seems especially vicious, and I see no sign of it even abating. If anything, it's actually hotting up, and you worry that they'll actually have the self-restraint to be able to rein it in, or whether there'll actually be some kind of excessive behavior that finally sobers everybody up to the dangers that these things can bring about. That's the worry. Any last words before we bid adieu to our listeners and viewers?
No. I mean, I for me, it was my reaction was the opposite of yours, Damodar. I was shocked and surprised when the GBC said that they would hand the case to the CPO, and when they backtracked, I was like, okay, now we're on how do you say?
Territory that familiar ground.
Yeah. No, that was expected. No, I'm just going to end with a quote. I don't even know who it's from. That says that a society that doesn't take a definitive stance for the protection of its children doesn't stand for much and has no future. And that's really, for me, that's really profound.
Yeah, no, that really does capture it. Thank you very much, both of you, for again being so generous with your time and so insightful with your thoughts. I suspect that this is going to be a routine opportunity for us from time to time to be able to check in and hopefully keep nudging the society forward. Thank you to all our listeners for participating and sending in all your great questions and so on. I'll end the broadcast now, but I'll invite Dhira Govinda and Sanaka to just debrief with me. Oh, here's one final couple of questions. Thank you for the insight and determination to keep the issue going forwards, and Sri Gauranga's movement needs joyful, protected children. Nice thoughts there. Thank you. Hare Krishna.